Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scene Change. Today's episode is very special because it's basically a one woman show, but we are very fortunate to be able to have our producer Shane here who will chime in since he's actually been through the process that we're going to discuss today. So, I'm essentially hosting a tutorial today on how to motivate yourself to start a new performing arts project. So, for those of you who are into New Year's resolutions, or if you just enjoy a fresh year with something different to look forward to, you'll really enjoy this episode about starting something new. Basically, starting something new can induce fear, right? So, especially when you're doing something visual, something in front of an audience, but if vision is not necessarily your strong suit, or if you're doing anything in a realm that you're not particularly comfortable in, you may experience some fear. But we'll talk about that more later. Either way, don't worry. We're going to have Shane here to pop in as needed. And
Hi.
I'm basically exactly just like that. And I'm basically just going to share things that I've learned from our guests. And since Shane's been there for every episode, he's also going to chime in. Um, so basically, yeah, that's it. It'll be the secrets, the tips, the tricks of how to start a new performing arts project as a blind performer, a performer with disabilities, you name it. This is applicable to everyone. So let's discuss the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Let's just jump into it. Welcome to Scene Change, a podcast by the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. All about equality, opportunity, accessibility, and the arts. Here, you'll learn adaptive techniques from performers in the know. We are changing what it means to be blind, one stage at a time. Thank you for joining us today. Hello again, everyone, and thank you for joining us in this very interesting episode of Scene Change. Let's jump right in with step one. Move past anxiety, right? So, this is something that you'll hear about if you listen to the podcast often, getting past fear, having confidence, so on and so forth. But we're just going to name it for what it is. Um, you have to get past the anxiety. This may be brand new information for some people if you're a first time listener to the show, or this may be information that you've already heard, but you're just not putting it into use yet. But I'm sure you will. We just really encourage you um, to listen to various episodes again. And I have some listed below for you. And we also encourage you to try it out. Just maybe try listening to what we have to say because this is a different format than it's been presented before. Um, Shane, I know you were
Speaking of
there.
what we
You,
have to say,
yeah, right.
I feel like,
I was gonna say, I know you were there um, during Christina Washburn's episode. I know for me, she like just talking with her. She's such a relaxing person to talk to. Her energy just makes me feel really calm. And I don't know about you, but for me, just relaxing and taking a deep breath and having a really calm mindset just really opens my mind to the fact that I can do it. How about you?
yeah, and I feel like there's this concept that, like, to start a project, you should be good at it. It's something that
Mm,
you should have some skill in. And I think that's ridiculous, right? Because, like, the way that I'm motivated to start a project is because it's something that I'm passionate about. And so I never got good at anything because I was already good at it. That doesn't make sense. Like,
exactly.
I was passionate about something, I started it, I finished it, and then I did something new based on skills that I learned. And so you evolve through the project. So the anxiety for me usually comes out of like, oh, you're not good at this, so why should you start it? It's like you're not going to learn anything unless you start it.
100% agree. In fact, I think that it's not even about being good in the beginning. It's more about accepting that you can, that it's possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'll work out, whether it works out well, whether it works out not. So the in the way that you intended, it'll work out either way. It'll work out however it's supposed to work out. right? So I think that this also goes for instructors, for those out there who are listening who are teachers of blind performers. You can teach this blind person to do your performing art. So just start there. Don't start with the, oh, they can't do this. So they don't start from a place of can't. They can't see, so they can't do this performing art style, and they can't. Just don't even start there. Start with what they can do. Start from a positive place. Start from a place of possibility. And I think that that's just going to open your mind to a way of thinking that is more useful, and it's going to work out.
And like what we were talking about earlier is still true, right? Because I know some teachers who they didn't think they couldn't teach me because I was dumb. They thought they couldn't teach me because they didn't take a class on teaching someone with disabilities in their undergrad. So like,
Precisely.
again, just because you're not good at it doesn't mean you shouldn't start the project. Like the it's a two-way street.
100%. 100%. So yeah, so this totally goes for teachers. This goes for performers. Um, so on and so forth. And I just think that it's a lot of anxiety is rooted in fear. Like Shane was saying, it's essentially a fear of not being good enough at whatever this thing is, right? But I find that fear can often block creativity. Um, my most creative moments are when I'm just like relaxed and just having fun with something, as opposed to having this slowdown of that fear brings, this freezing, like, fear, it's kind of like this fight or flight situation, right? Um, fear can, just kind of cause you to like to freeze. Nowadays it's freeze, fight or flight, right? So fear can just cause you to freeze, and it can just stop your flow state, your energy, your creative energy that you would have had. um or it can cause you to just kind of like freak out, or it can just cause you to just flee from it, just not even pursue whatever it is that you want to pursue. And if it's something that is in your mind to do, um there's a reason. It's in your heart. It's you're passionate about it for a reason. So 100% go for it. Also related to what Shane was saying, I recommend listening to the November with Noe episode, and I'm going to get into this even more later. But he is someone who has tried a number of instruments. And he's like, you know what? Like, I tried this, I didn't like it. I tried that, I like this about it, so I kept that. It's exactly what Shane was talking about when he talks about evolving and evolution. So I 100% recommend listening to that episode. And if you just want to hear someone who is just really good about just relaxation and just letting the creative energy flow from a place of relaxation and from a place of can do, um, and just a positive attitude, then I recommend listening to our June 2022 episode about accessible ballet with Krishna Washburn. Just one more note on this about the energy of fear and how you can switch it into excitement, because they're both forms of energy, right? So it's like you have fear, and it's like you get it, like your blood gets flowing, your heart is pumping, you're like, whoa, what if something happens? And then you can also just switch that just one little notch over to a different heart pumping form of energy, and that is excitement and enthusiasm for what you're about to do. Almost like getting on a roller coaster. Like maybe you're a little bit afraid, but you're pumped. You're looking forward to it. You're like, maybe this will go terribly, but also maybe this will go really, really well. And so I just encourage you, when you feel those feelings of fear and anxiety, I just encourage you to switch it over to excitement and say, you know what, instead of worrying about what could go wrong, I'm excited about what could go right. Have you ever tried that, Shane?
No.
I love it.
that
I appreciate your honesty.
is like that is one of those things. As you were saying it, I was like, I literally don't understand how that's even possible.
No, no, I like that. I like that. And I'm glad that I asked you in that case, because you know what? I've done that. I've done that on stage before, where I was just so nervous to perform in front of a certain crowd, especially because I perform as a hobby. You know what I mean? Like, you perform
Yeah.
professionally, and you do these things regularly, whereas I just do these things from time to time. So one day, I was on stage, and I was like, wow, it's been a while since I've been on stage, and there's a lot of people out there, and I was really nervous and I was shaking with fear, but I just said, you know what? I'm going to flip this. I'm going to flip this from a negative emotion of forgetting my lines and, and thinking of things that could go wrong. And I'm going to turn this into, what if I just go out there and I just, have a huge smile on my face, and I just really throw myself into this role. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
and it was over the summer, when I was in Taiwan and we were performing in Chinese. And I was like, what if I don't understand what someone says? What if I forget? What if I use the wrong tone? All these different what ifs were going in my head that could go wrong. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to give this all I've got and just really get into the character that I'm being right now. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I conquer that with practice. So for me, like
mm-hmm,
the fear goes away when I start, like when the performance
mm,
starts, or when the
mm.
conversation starts. And so I have a lot of conversations and I perform a lot, so that that fear doesn't come as often. It just feels more natural. It's like there may be that like initial anxiety, but my goal is to perform as much as I can, so that when the next big gig is happening, there's that initial anxiety, and then you get into the groove, and it's fine. It's all muscle memory at that point.
So when you say like practice and performing, you're saying like practice on your own and then just going out in front of those audiences more and more and more.
Exactly, because there's two factors. There's the actual
Mm-hmm.
talent, and there's the people, like the witnesses
I
in
gotcha.
the
Yeah,
audience.
yeah, yeah. And they totally, you're right. You're right. There's two different forms of there's almost like the fear that's like within you about like, oh, what if I forget? What if I do this wrong? And then there's also the fear of like there's a lot of people here. So you're like, you know what? Let me just take care of each of these separately. I'll take care of one on my own, take care of one in front of the audience. Voila. No, that's really good.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think there's a lot of different ways to conquer fear and anxiety. And I think if, for example, someone's fear is not coming from performing in front of an audience, but just jumping into something new, um, sometimes it's just a matter of knowing that, like we said before, it's okay, it's going to work out. And then podcasts like this show you that people have done it before. You know what I mean? Even if you think someone hasn't done it before, you think like, oh, there's no, blind acrobatic, Cirque du Soleil style performer out there. No, there is. You know what I mean? Um, and it might not
That
always
was
be
so cool.
marketed. Yeah, that's one of my favorite episodes. And it might not even be marketed in that way. So it's not always easy to find. If you Google search blind Cirque du Soleil, it might not be there in that way. But I bet these people are out there. We've had so many different people on the podcast that I'm willing to bet that somewhere along the way, someone has tried the performing art that you're into. So stuff is about organizing your thoughts, right? Um, really admitting to yourself what it is that you want to do. Is it dance? Is it singing? Is it your stage presence and expression? Is it a combination of these things? Is it walking the runway? What is it that you want to do? A new instrument. There's so many different things. Songwriting. So many different things that you might want to try. Learning braille music. Different skills, right? But you got to start somewhere. You might not want to start like maybe it's all these things, but maybe don't start with all of them at once. It's kind of a lot. However, if you would like to involve yourself in all of these endeavors, I do recommend that you do them because you can. And there's no reason why, if you want to do all these things, you can't. It's just that you want to start somewhere. That's going to start with organization. And that organization really does start with you. If there is something that you want to learn to do, just as a side note, that we have not featured on the show and you want us to interview someone or you have someone in mind who we could interview, please do let us know, preferably via email, nfbpad@gmail.com, or you can let us know in the YouTube comments. But aside from that, it's starting somewhere. Shane, you play a lot of instruments and so on and so forth. You have a lot of talents. Where'd you start?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I started by trying everything I didn't like, just by coincidence, and so I just kept trying stuff until I found what I liked.
That's it. You know what I mean? We're gonna get into this. I think it's in the next step, but that's exactly it. Be willing to try different things, but just pick one to start. And it's all about being honest with yourself. Which one is the most either which one do you feel the strongest about in a good way or in a bad way? It really doesn't matter which one. Because maybe it's trying something you don't like, and then you're like, oh, I'm not that bad at this thing that I don't like. I'll probably be far better at something I do like. Or maybe you pick something that you really do like, and you're like, oh, I love this thing, and I'm really good at it. Or I love this thing, but it's not what I thought it would be. There's so many things. When you pick something, when you just pick an area and you start there, but it does take some organization and honesty with yourself. Not a lot. Okay, when I say organization, that might sound intimidating. um as in, like you need to, I don't know, have like this long list and write things down. If that's your style, then that's your style, you do that. But if it's not, then just say, I like how this thing sounds, or I think I would be horrible at this, or I think I'd be awesome at that. Or you hear a song and there's a flute in the background and you're like, I'd like to play that melody, something like that. Just whatever it is that you want to start with, start there.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a lot of pressure. Some of the greatest musicians I know were actually like pressured into starting a completely different instrument first. You know what you're feeling and what you're not feeling and where your passion is. And so just opening that door and jumping in with something, you'll know after a few sessions, if not sooner, like what is valuable to you and what you would want to move on from.
I agree. And similar, not quite the same, but a similar vein. Don't diminish your goals or whatever you want to do, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you like, to something that you feel comfortable with, if that makes sense. So if you play the violin, but you hate it, and you're like, well, I'm just going to switch over to the viola next, not because you care about the viola, but because you know that you have the violin basis, I would say if you really know that you want to do guitar next, just jump over to guitar. If you want to do piano next, just jump to piano. If you want to jump to the bongo, like whatever it is that you want to do, you want to do drums next, just do whatever it is that you want to do. Because I do think that sometimes um, when you're doing something that's too easy for you, or that you're doing not because you have a passion for it, like I said, either a love or a hate for it, you know what I mean? You might not want to do it anymore, but it's not because of, or you might not be very good at it, or you might not want to do it, but it's not because of a lack of talent per se. Sometimes it's just a lack of interest, because you kind of know that you're taking the easy road. Have you ever had this, even outside of performing? But have you ever had this, so Shane?
Yeah, I feel this way with like writing papers. The
Mm-hmm.
more I write papers, like I write good papers. I studied for a long time to be able to write good papers, but like
True.
the more I write, the more I hate writing, and then like I have to recharge.
It's so surreal. So I would just keep that in mind as you all are performing out there. And another thing that I would say is don't focus on failure, but commit to resilience. And committing to resilience does not have to be forcing yourself, like forcing a performing art or an instrument or anything else, like that you don't want to do. What I mean when I say resilience is exactly what Shane was talking about before, is evolving, is trying different things, is figuring out what you do like about something, and also figuring out what you don't like about something. These are all forms of bouncing back. You don't have to be a guitar master if you're not into the guitar. It's like Shane said, after you try it a couple of times if it's your thing or not. You also know, um, if you don't quite know how you feel about it. You're like, maybe like you don't know. You're like, I could like it. I don't know. And that's okay. Just keep going with it if that's the case. But if you try it, you're like, I hate this. It's not me. Figure out what it is that you like about it, what it is that you don't like about it, and then you can move on from there. And that is a form of resilience. And I wrote a note here just saying that many of our guests have done this with instruments, as Shane just talked about, and even styles of performing art. And this is the section that I was talking about, with Noe, because he has so many different experiences with different styles of music, different instruments, so on and so forth. So I recommend listening to November with Noe. It's our November 2022 episode. He also plays in the episode. So if you need some motivation from there, highly recommend checking out that episode. Just making sure that you start somewhere is the biggest key about the step. No?
Absolutely, and look at the field too. If you like podcasts and you have a great personality, but you hate audio editing, then be like Lizzy, host a show. You know what I mean? Like if you like arranging music but you don't like being on stage, be a musical director
Mm-hmm.
and find a band to work with.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways to like be a part of the field and be a part of the industry without doing everything in that field.
100%. Oftentimes it's about knowing yourself and knowing the people around you, knowing your resources, and just letting people know, hey, this is what I'm interested in doing. Do you know anyone? Could you put me in contact with anyone who could help out with this? And voila,
Yeah,
this is
and
how the
working with a
podcast was
good
born.
team really helps take away anxiety as well.
Oh, for sure. 100%. 100%. So that really was a really great segue into step three, which is take action. So take action toward making your performing art a reality. That's what it's about. Finding resources, as we just talked about, connecting with people you know. Hey, do you know anyone who does this? Um, Finding people who to teach what you want to learn. If I wanted to learn audio editing, I don't. But if I did, I could ask Shane for resources, or or ask him, for advice, so on and so forth. Like, it's all about learning what you don't know, or very much like Shane said, um, getting in contact with people who know what you don't know. Um, so I just have different categories here. So like, because I wanted to brainstorm, like help people brainstorm as they listen to this. So like, to learn a new instrument, right? People could, learn it at school. They could learn from a local program. How do you feel about learning instruments online, Shane? Is that useful? I haven't tried
I
it.
think so.
Mhm.
Actually, I've learned a lot of great fills and techniques online, and it comes into play too, particularly when you're not like when you're starting something that you know you're not good at and you're really new at it. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I have anxiety about like I know someone who's really good at this, but I really suck at this. So let me learn a few things online first, so I know what kind of questions to ask, and then reach out to them.
100%.
And so that helps
100%.
like kind of conquer that fear a little bit. You've got a little bit under your belt, have a little bit of experience. It targets your questions a bit.
For sure. And that's going to come up
That's true
too,
for any
because like,
field.
it's true. I was going to say that. I think that's going to come up a bit later too, because you know what? The worst thing to do is to ask someone who's really good at something, a professional, especially, who their time is limited. They don't have time to answer the questions that you could Google so easily. It's kind of rude to ask them like the really basic questions. And it's one thing if you did try Googling it and people are explaining it online, but you just don't get it. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you just need like a real life person to explain the thing that's not connecting for you. That's different. But if you didn't even try to Google it and you're just like, yeah, so where do I start? Like, that's just not nice. Because time is precious. Um,
Yeah.
However, people are more than willing to help out, especially if you've already done some of the legwork yourself. And even just a simple Google search for where to start with playing X instrument is
Yeah.
is that can be a start.
And if you need that personal interaction, but you don't want to like risk a connection just yet or like access a connection just yet, there are
Mm-hmm.
lots of resources. There are Facebook groups and email lists, either like for NFB performing arts or
Mm-hmm.
just mainstream learners of a new field that you can tap for information without scrolling through YouTube videos for hours and everything's visual and you can't find what you're looking for.
That can be a real pain sometimes. And I've also heard too that when there are videos on YouTube and everything is visual, my gosh, I think it's Ira. They should be sponsoring us. They're not. But I think it's Ira is a really good resource for um for YouTube videos that are all visual and they can, very much explain what's going on. It might also be My Eyes. Shane, write these down as possible sponsors for the future.
Yeah.
But they can totally describe to you what's going on if that's useful for you. So there are a lot of different ways. Also, in general, like places of worship often have like free instruments that you can play. You know what I mean?
That's a good one.
Obviously it wouldn't just be like for funsies, but like if you are willing to play with them, or whatever the case may be, this way you don't have to put money out to buy your own instrument, and it's in good shape because they need to use it. So I would also check there. But those are just a couple of ideas. If you have any other ones, drop them in the comments. Get a conversation going amongst other listeners, and with
Email
us
us
as
if you
well.
need connections though.
That
Like
is
if you have
true,
questions and you don't know where to look,
100%. Mm-hmm.
we've got you on that. YouTube videos are usually better for instruments, and if you're looking at like technical work, like audio production or engineering, I tend to go for articles because they're a little
Mm.
bit they're specific and they give you the background knowledge, but you're not relying on the screenshots as much, like the screen capture.
I like that. That's really smart. I'm a huge fan of articles. I'm always reading articles and sending them to random people. So yes, I'm a huge fan of the article. If you want to do dance, this is something that I have a little experience in, but your local dance studios and even gyms and fitness centers will often have a dance instructor who will come in, say like one night a week or something like that, and they're just teaching lessons. But definitely online classes for sure. They're better in person, I will say, because there are some things that are just a bit more, if it's a new dance style for you, there are some things that are kind of complicated to explain. You just never know the kinds of like body poses that people are doing. It's just like, what? I never even thought of doing that before. Um, so I prefer in-person groups, but it is possible. We did have Sierra, I believe her last name is pronounced Terrio, in our ballet episode from December 2020. She talks about how she does online classes for her ballet courses. And obviously that was when, during the height of COVID. So I'm pretty sure she had no other choice, but she's also quite experienced in ballet. So she was able to take these online classes with no problem. So I would say that it really depends on how deep into that style of dance you are. But obviously, this episode is about starting something new. So presumably, you don't know much about that style of dance. So I would recommend more so informal groups, whether you meet them on meetups or if you just kind of are going just like with a group of friends, something like that. Um, I would recommend in person sessions for dance, specifically for those with visual disabilities.
If you
Now,
can't
how
get to a
about
studio, there's also Darkroom Ballet has beginner classes, which I think
oh,
might be free.
100%. They are free. Yep. How could I
Yeah,
forget?
Krishna's great.
Yes, she really, really is. And she's someone who knows how to explain, as a blind performer herself, she knows how to explain what things look like, so on and so forth. So 100%, that's an excellent online resource. Um, for singing and songwriting, I think this is honestly like a precious question. We have to have her on to talk about
I
songwriting.
recommend preciousperezmusica.com.
Of course. You would not be a dutiful husband if you did not
For your
recommend
singing and
that.
songwriting lesson needs.
Precisely, precisely. So, but yeah, so it's yet again, I think this is something that could totally be learned um online, and there are like, oh my goodness, just so many platforms for it. Obviously, you could go to school for it as well, which is what Precious did, and that's why she is such a whiz at it now. But then there's also like, Shane, have you heard of this before? Where people just like they go on these retreats and they'll just rent a house. Like, I know someone who rented a house like in New Mexico, and they just were there for a week, just singing and songwriting, just with their instruments out, and just I don't know, just having constant jam sessions. Have you done anything like that?
I'm actually going to do that in a couple weeks.
That's
I'm
awesome.
getting my band Midair Decision is getting together for a whole week. We're all taking off work and we're just going to have a writing and recording retreat to put some music together.
So much fun. So if you have friends who are artists, and you're not gonna be a nuisance, maybe you just want to be a fly on the wall for a day just to kind of see what it's like and just see what you can pick up and see what you can learn
Absolutely.
from retreats like this. Let's see. If people want to get into acting, my goodness, there's so many ways. So you could go the school route, like the university route with classes. That could be quite expensive. Um, there's also like improv workshops too, though. If you just want to get out there, just kind of break your like any fear that you may have or anxiety. If you just kind of want to just like get over that, just throw yourself into an improv class. We have blind people who have done that, and they've had awesome experiences and essentially just kept going back and even pulled friends into it because they've had so much fun. Um, are you familiar with Briley and Ryan, Shane?
No, I'm not.
No, they're so cool. Actually, we should probably have them on.
I'm so
Because
uncultured.
they no, but they absolutely love improv, and they've led some improv workshops for us at convention. But also like when things are being hosted at local theaters, whether it be classes or casting calls, so on and so forth, you can just you can show up. You can go ahead if you'd like, if you need any accommodations, or you could just kind of show up and kind of see where things go. It just kind of depends on your level of comfort, um, on how you want to handle it. Shane, if you were an actor or wanted to get into it, how would you? I'm just curious. This is not to say like it's right or wrong, but
Yeah.
how would you go about it? Like
So
improv
the oh like improv. So
or something like that.
I'm
Yeah.
lucky that I'm friends with a bunch of nerds like me, and so the way that I would start with improv is we actually for fun sometimes will play a couple different games. One of them is the rant game, where the group assigns a topic to you and you have to rant about that topic for
I love improv
an amount of
games.
time. So
Yeah.
that's exciting. There's also the S game where you have to communicate without making the S or the Z sound. So you can tell stories, you could talk about your week, but you have to take these sounds out of your vocabulary, and so it
Wow.
really like makes me think about what I'm saying and
Mm-hmm.
how I'm responding because it's like the Inquisition in there. People are asking questions, they're trying to throw you off every second,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so it really like ups my game in terms of improv presentations. I had to do a lot of presentations in college and for work, so
Mm-hmm.
like when I present, I have very minimal notes because I feel like I communicate best that way instead of trying to script myself too much. And so that helps me. The more I present, the better my improv skill is because I'm used to winging it and I'm used to talking based on the knowledge that I have.
100%. My family knows I am such a fan of improv games. I always try to get them to play. They only stick around for like one game. And they're kind of like, no, they're like, my sisters look at me, they go,
You can join
this
us.
is, these are smart people games, is what they tell me. I'm like, they're like, you really have to use your brain for, let's just play Monopoly. You know what I mean? Which Monopoly is
Monopoly isn't a
also,
smart people game.
I think there's levels in their minds.
There's
But I think there's levels to this, and Monopoly is easier than improv, according to my sisters at least.
fair enough.
So it's always fun. Another game. It's not an improv game exactly, but it's called Poetry for Neanderthals. It's more of I guess it's considered a board game. Do you know it, Shane? It's so
No,
much
I just
fun.
like the name.
No, it's fun. So basically, there's these cards. So like, let's say a card says the word birthday party. Well, you need to describe the word or the phrase birthday party but you can only use one syllable words, right? So
Oh
it's
wow.
like, yeah, friends. You can't say like gathering, but you just like friends, fun. Like you just say like these random words, and it's
Ooh,
awesome. I
that's a
love
good
this game.
one.
I know, but I can never get anyone to play with me. They played with me once, and they were like, "Yep, that's enough of that."
Let's do
So
it.
I
Let's do
know
it.
we should, like, definitely 100%. We'll figure it out how to do it like a
Scene change
online.
game night. Let's do
Well,
it.
that'd be fun. Or we could just, yeah, just like host a show with improv
Absolutely.
games. That'd be so much fun. Um, but yeah, so basically, if you want to get into acting, or just any of these categories of performing that we've discussed, basically, we've given you some ideas to brainstorm how to get there, or just ideas, and you decide based on your comfort level what you want to do, um, based on the transportation that's available to you, and how you can get to these places, or if online is a better medium for you, just apply these to yourself and whatever way works for you. So now that you've done some research and you've decided what resources you'd like to tap into, it's time to get a list together, which I know, like I said earlier, you don't have to list. The only reason why I recommend a list for this, and I know I had to make it sound really exciting because it's a list and not everybody likes lists.
I like lists.
Me too, but I wasn't going to say that. I think it's because we're nerds. But I know a
I
lot of
like
people
it.
don't. I know a lot of people don't like lists. But the reason why I recommend a list is because if one of your resources, we'll say, doesn't work out and you don't feel empowered and maybe you feel discouraged, like, oh, this is never going to work for me, you have the list to fall back on. Um, I would say have at least three things on your list, at least three different mediums. So let's say, you've decided I want to go into learning instruments. You make these different, you list these different places, those that we've told you and those that you thought of, or those that you've read in the YouTube comments. Um, and you have this list. That way, if thing number one doesn't work out, like let's say online doesn't work out, um, then you have like at least two other options. But I would honestly recommend 5 to 10. You won't need 10. I can just tell you that. I just strongly
Nope.
feel that you won't need 10. I don't have any proof that you won't need 10, but I've done this before and I've never needed 10. Of course, I'm everyone, right? But
Yeah, you are.
I just don't think that you're gonna need 10. It's just good to have it for comfort. But at least three. I think five is a sweet spot. And by the time you get to the fifth one, something will work out, or you'll have more knowledge that you can work off of. So
Yeah, and we're a free one. by the way.
Yeah, we are free.
But and
We're
like
very free.
we can add stuff to your list. So I like 60% of the reason we exist is to connect you with people, with lessons, with resources to improve at your performing art of choice. So like don't underutilize that.
For sure. This podcast, let me tell you, I know sometimes, I've gotten feedback. They're like, oh, like the episodes are long, but they're good. It's true. Like the episodes are long, but they're long because we want you to have all this inside knowledge. We don't
We're
want,
thorough.
yeah, we are. Like, we don't want to cut out the good stuff for you. You know what I mean? Like, we want you to know what we know. So even if you say, I'm going to listen to half, the podcast on, today and then the other half tomorrow or whatever, however you want to do it, I recommend listening to these different episodes because sometimes you think that you're going to walk away from an episode with one piece of knowledge and you just walk away with so much more. Um,
Yeah.
for
Also,
example,
no one's going to judge you. Like
oh,
if
for
you
sure, for
this
sure.
is a good way to discover what you like and what you don't like. If you start an episode you're like, "God, that sounds dreadful." And you go to the next one, you know what you don't want to learn.
It's
So,
so true.
it's a good way to figure out what you like.
No, 100%, because you know what? And on the flip side, like it goes with the same idea. No one's going to judge you, right? So like if you are like, I'm not going to do ballet ever. No one's going to know that you listen to the ballet episode. You know what I mean? And you can still walk away from
Exactly.
that episode with really good information that you never knew you wanted or needed. Um, but yeah, like the getting the holiday gig episode is really good, even when it's not the holiday, because they just provided so much information about confidence and how to build confidence. Like that's something that they had these fresh ideas that I just never would have considered. Um, so listen to the holiday episode in, July if you so choose. A bit of Christmas in July if that's your thing. And even if it's not, just listen to these different things. And feel free, you can skip around. It's your podcast. You can do whatever you want to do. If you want to skip to the middle, if you want to just listen in 5 minute increments just to see, oh, this sounds interesting. What were they talking about? Rewind a little. There's so many different ways that you could use this resource. But before you I guess get to, once you have this list, but before you start calling people or not calling, I guess it's a bit old fashioned. I still call people. Okay.
I
Um,
definitely call people.
Shane calls people all the time, which is
I
really
still
funny.
call pizza places.
You still call pizza places. That's funny.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so before you start contacting and reaching out and things like that, I would figure out what the startup costs are going to be. If there are any, we're talking about ourselves as a free resource, but not every resource is free. Um, and figure out what the startup cost is just to test it out. So whether it be one session, 3 sessions, five, whatever you can reasonably, whatever works for you reasonably. Um, just figure out what it's going to entail, not just for lessons, because maybe the lessons are free, but maybe you have to buy something. Maybe there's a specific shoe for a style of dance, or clothing for, I don't know, or props for acting, or do you have to buy the guitar, all these, or accessories that you might need. There's so many different things that go along, and costs that go along with performing, but not always. The first question that you need to ask yourself before you go buying things is, are these things absolutely necessary? Or can you get by for a little while without purchasing these items? For example, but this is just a resource that I know where Christian's like, listen, you don't need to buy anything to take these classes. You don't have to buy ballet shoes to do darkroom ballet. Um, which by the way is starting January 21st for anyone who is interested. Her spring session is starting up. But this is something where she's designed the class so that you don't have to go out and buy things when you're just, when you're trying it out, when you're a beginner.
Which is
So ask
incredible.
yourself, yeah, I know, isn't that awesome?
I love
Um,
that.
but it's just, you ask yourself, are these things absolutely necessary? And if you have an instructor, ask the instructor, what accessories, what items are absolutely necessary for me to start this? And what can I get by without while I figure out if this is for me?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
go
You have a
ahead.
little
What are you gonna say?
advantage if you're starting something in a technical field. You have a little advantage because
Mm-hmm.
most of these products have like a free trial. So if you want to start radio broadcasting, you can get a lot of that software for for free for the first month while you're learning it. Or I always recommend Reaper to people as a digital audio workstation if you're starting with the technical side, because it's actually their business model is not to give you a trial necessarily, but to give you the entire product, and you have access to the entire product forever. But they want you to buy it, and they expect that you pay for it. But you have all the time that you need. If you download it and 2 weeks in, it's finals week, and you have to take 3 weeks to study and prep and work on stuff, and then come back to it, Reaper will be there. But
Mm.
all of the workstations have some form of trial. So Pro Tools, Logic, whatever you want to get into, has some form of trial. For instruments, go to a music shop. You can play anything in there for free. They'll let you play it just to see what it's like
Ah,
and get an idea of the tone or the sound of it. You can tune them up. When I shop for new drums, I bring a drum key. I go in there and I screw with the tuning of every drum in the store pretty much until I find the one that I want. So most music shops are really accommodating and friendly and will help you find something that fits well in your budget, but that also sounds good.
I like that idea. I never would have thought of that, just going into a music shop. And the thing about it is, I mean, I haven't been in a music shop since I was, I don't know, in like fifth grade playing the violin, but I do remember the vibe is like they're very chill. Like they don't, obviously they want to make a sale, but they're
Yes,
not gonna like push you. You know what I mean? Like they're
it's
very
true.
kind, and you know what I mean? Um, so I highly recommend that. That was a really good idea, Shane.
Thank you.
But just once you know the startup costs, and if it's free, then great. But if it's not, then I recommend that you save up, fundraise. You can ask around about it. There are sometimes different, music scholarships or sponsorships, fellowships, like all these different resources, for people who are into music. But then there's also the possibility that there are free or discounted materials. You don't know, how many people play the guitar, but then like whether they stop playing or they're no longer able to play or whatever the case may be, their family has no interest in keeping their guitars, or not even just guitars, but their instruments or whatever their thing is that they were really into. Um, so I would definitely just ask around. Like Shane mentioned, different Facebook groups and things like that. And just you can even check out places that are like very anti-waste. Like not even just groups that are all about music or performing, but just places that are anti-waste. They're not going to want to throw away, perfectly good materials. So I would recommend just checking these different places out, and just letting people know that you're interested in your new performing art is a really good thing to do. Like, don't be shy about that, because when you let people know, you'd be surprised how many people are willing to help. So I just would recommend putting the word out and just letting people know that, hey, I'm going to be trying this out. I don't know if it'll go far, whatever like that. Don't put any pressure on me. But if you have any resources, if you have um, anything that might be useful to me, please let me know. And that brings us to step 6 of 8. Make the move. A lot of people say shoot your shot. Um, this is the piece where you want to start contacting people. Um, this is where you want to start asking follow-up questions. On the podcast, I'm asking the questions that I'm interested in, or, that Shane, throws me, or that Caitlin throws me, or, whoever else. Sometimes it's things that you all, our listeners have emailed in, that you wanted to know about. So if there's something that I haven't asked here, or maybe you saw a totally different interview with someone who's doing the kind of performing art that you're interested in. Um, and just as you ask your follow-up questions, the biggest thing is what Shane mentioned earlier: doing a bit of research first before you reach out, and then getting in contact just to be sure. Hey, I want to ask a follow-up question that I didn't hear. Now, do remember that at the end of every single episode, our guests do provide their contact information. So it might be their social media, it might be an email address, it might be a website. Um, but either way, that information is available to you. So you can hear a bit about their personal story, their journey to how they got where they are. And if that person, if you have something in common with that person, or maybe nothing at all, but but besides, the instrument that they play or the performing arts that they engage in, um, reach out to them. Just feel free to ask any questions that we didn't ask here, or ask a follow up question to something that we did ask here. Because we only have but so much time. We don't keep you guys here for like 4 or 5 hours.
True. We another great resource once you're at this stage and you've done some research, while you're coming up and accelerating, is recording artists and music professionals with disabilities. There's a huge
Oh yes,
network
Ram. Yes,
of
yes,
blind
yes.
professionals who are generally really willing and open to communicate about their craft and give you advice. And they've come up with disabilities, and so they know what situation most of our audience is in, and they have a lot of perspective on that. So that's another great resource when you're at this point in step 6.
100%. I also recommend at this stage, if you need to contact class instructors, program instructors, anything like that, just to introduce yourself, um, and see if there's a match there, see if this would work for you. Um, See if you feel comfortable with this person, even if they've never taught a blind person before. Are they open to it? Are they willing? Or are they just gonna, kind of like shut you down? Whatever the case may be, this is not about, getting upset at people, and you may have a reaction to it. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you may feel, some type of way that someone didn't want you in their class. I know I've been there. I know I felt some type of way. But the biggest thing is resiliency here. And also, don't even think about it as this being a situation where, they are rejecting me as a blind person, so on and so forth. This is honestly about you. This is not about them and what they think. This is about you and what's going to work for you as someone who's starting a new performing arts project, as someone who's learning, right? Um, so don't take it as them rejecting you. Just take it as an opportunity for you to see if this is a match. And if it's not a match, then honestly, like, they're not getting your business. So if it makes you feel better, then you could think of it as you rejecting them. Um, or just, you could take it as it just didn't work out. You know what I mean? And it could be very neutral. It doesn't have to be um, one person winning or not winning, because at the end of the day, it just wasn't a match, and that's okay. Um, if you have faced this and you want to hear more about someone else who's been through a similar situation, I would check out our September issue, the Be Prepared issue. Be prepared, be very prepared, where Precious and Chi Kim and Christina Ebersol are discussing getting into music schools, because Christina Ebersol in that episode talks about how she applied for different music schools and was rejected, literally on the basis of her blindness. But she also discusses how she got past it. Now she's at a different school, and that school is a much better fit for her. Um, and then on another note, our we had Brittany on. It was the episode entitled "Fabulous Blonde Fashion." Um, so that one, I like how she put it. She's like, listen, you won't be everyone's cup of tea. And it's not always based on blindness. So that's another way to think of it. Maybe it's not even just that. It just might be that they teach in a different style than you want or than you need. Because at the end of the day, it's about your learning style and who's going to be the best person to teach you. Um, so basically, another aspect of making contact is, don't put too much stock into what other people think when it comes to a professional relationship, and learning from someone who's supposed to be, a professional. um, you just have to remember, is it the right fit or not? If it's not the right fit, then exit, just move on there. This is why I encourage having lists that are longer than just one or two people. Yet again, my list of 5 to 10, I think, will work really nicely here. Of course, it's going to depend on, different aspects, but by the time you get to a certain number, you will have found someone, or you will have, found a way to communicate to that person, hey, this is my first time doing it, but I know I can do it, and I'm sure you can teach it too. And also, just starting from that place of positivity may very well help um, in this instance. But the biggest thing is just remembering what your goal is. Your goal is to learn something new. Your goal is to start something new. Your goal is probably to be successful, at this new thing that you're doing. your goal is not to be this person's psychoanalyst and try to figure out why they don't want to teach a blind person, so on and so forth. That's really something that is not your concern at the moment. So just don't put that on your plate. You know what I mean? That's the way that I would think of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there's this idea that like also once you find what you're passionate about, build up your skill set, and have success, you'll be able to give back to the next
Mm-hmm.
group of new people. So, you're not burdening people. You're not adding to their workload in a way that someone won't add to your workload in the future. So,
Mm,
people, I always say that like my success is built on things that other people have given to me all throughout my life, and so my goal is always to give that back, and that's a really important mindset to have going into it. You're
it
gonna
is.
you're gonna take and consume energy right now from someone who doesn't have to give it to you necessarily, but that's not a bad thing because they want to give back, and eventually, you'll be doing the same thing.
That's so true. You know, the best thing that I'm liking about this episode so far is like we're giving these like two different perspectives, but both of them being very coming from a very positive place. And so
Yeah,
honestly, like no matter how you think of it, it's just really important to remember that you're going to be successful. There's also um as you're reaching out to people, I like what Shane said. Don't feel like you are a burden. You know what I mean? And honestly, if someone makes you feel like a burden and that's getting in the way of your performing, I would say move on from that situation. I don't like
it's
feeling like a
true.
burden. That bothers me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, like
it's
that.
important to
But
feel valued, even as a
mm-hmm,
learner. If someone
mm-hmm,
is if someone is making an art that you're passionate about feel like it's draining or it's like having a negative effect on your mental health, that's
yeah,
probably not a person who needs to be on that journey with
yeah.
you.
Yeah, exactly that. You want people who are happy to pour into you because they see what you could be. Those are the ones, at least for me, those are the ones who make me feel the most supported and just built up and honestly just like motivated to go even farther and to do better. It's not to say that there won't be people who make you feel that way of feeling drained and when that does happen, like I said, you can exit the that professional relationship or I mean honestly that's up to you. But I think that I'm a big person and like I'm big into thinking about like opposites, right? So if someone pouring into me makes me feel good, then someone making me feel drained would make me feel bad. And that's the reason why I think I have this mindset of move on. You know what I mean? But basically you don't the same thing with the negative impact of fear on your energy. You don't want this like negative experience with this person who says, I don't want to teach you or I can't teach you or whatever. It's not that they can't. I'm sure that they can, but they probably don't want to or they don't have the space for it right now, and that's okay. There's plenty of people who can. That's the biggest thing. Focusing on can.
Absolutely.
Back to step one.
Yeah. And
So,
learning stuff can be hard. So it's not
oh, for sure.
necessarily that like it's going to be an easy process, and if it's
For
hard then
sure.
you need to find another person until it becomes easy because that's not going to be
No,
the
that's not what we're
case.
saying.
It doesn't
That's
work
not
that
at all
way.
what we're saying. You have
Yep.
missed the memo. You need to hit
Yep.
rewind. 100%. Like, yeah, that's not at all what we're saying. I think it's more just about the relationship and just like that
Absolutely.
person's like it's about believing in yourself. That's really what this entire episode boils down to. But once you've set up lessons or you've made contact with people or whatever it is, you've figured out the costs and you've made arrangements for payment, then we are on really the final step. But I gave you a bonus. We're really on the final step here, which is show up. You know, show up and do the work. Um, Honestly, I think sometimes this can be the hardest part. What do you think?
It depends on what it is. I
Mm-hmm.
am so some of my passions feel more like work than others.
Hmm.
And some are more draining. I can play for hours and hours. I have very little like mental block when it comes to playing. So I could do that all day. But I cannot produce or mix for hours and hours because my ears get
Mm,
tired,
yep.
and the quality of work drops. And so there are some things that you're really passionate about and you want to do, but you can only do them for a certain amount of time, or you'll get burnt out. So that's really
It's real.
important. Like don't burn yourself out. when you feel like you might need to stop. I'm so bad at this. Like, let me just push a few more minutes. Let me hit a better stopping point than this, and
It's
then
me
I'm here for
too.
like another hour and a half. I'm like, oh wow, I really should like step back. Like, so be careful to not burn yourself out. It's definitely okay to take breaks when you're putting the work in, so that you keep the passion, because you don't want to take something that you're really passionate about and end up hating it.
Yeah,
That's why, if you can, find multiple things that you're passionate about.
that's real. Yeah, for sure. Burnout can really sour a passion. It can really sour a performance. It can really like it can just really sour things. So you do really want to avoid that situation. Um, and then also sometimes, especially starting something new. I don't know about for you, but maybe it's just a me thing. Maybe it's a blindness thing. I have no idea what it is, but sometimes just like going in there, like you can like kind of have like these like thoughts of like, oh, I find this more so with physical performances like dance. I find this in dance more than anything. And I think it's because it's literally all surrounding watching. And I'm like, I don't want people to look at me. Like obviously like you're
Yeah.
dancing, people are gonna look at you, right? Like you know what I mean?
Yep.
And like I'm probably doing it wrong. Like whatever everybody sees me doing wrong. Honestly, you just have to remember that everyone's learning and they're probably doing it wrong too. Um, and in some cases, you know, you are not like you could be doing it better than some of your classmates. And like really it's not about comparing, it's not a comparison. Everyone's there to learn, so just have fun with it, you know. Um, but if you've made it this far, um, shout out to the person who listens to this and then goes back and listens to it step by step and follows each of the steps. I encourage that. We should make that like a challenge.
That'd be amazing.
Because because I'm just thinking like if you make it this far, sometimes showing up is the thing that like it wants to like you almost want to stop yourself. It's like a self-sabotage kind of thing sometimes, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and you really do just want to push through and just do it. Just show up. If you need an episode to help you with some confidence building ideas, getting the gig, like I said, it's more than just a holiday episode. It is framed as a holiday episode, so just put it out in December. But getting the gig, they give some awesome ideas about building up confidence. And it's right at the end of the episode. So there you go. You'll have to listen to the whole thing because it was really awesome, or just skip to the end and hear what they have to say about confidence. Um, and then another one that really helps with building confidence and feeling empowered is Empowering an Empire with Lachi that we put out in April of 21.
Yep.
Um, that was just yet another episode where we just feel
She's incredible.
really, yeah, she's so, so cool. You know what I mean? Also actually the founder of RMPD, right?
Founder and
Yeah, she
president
co-founded.
of Ramped.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. You know, so listen, that's empowerment for you. You know, that's advocacy, empowerment, all of it. So if you need some help building up your confidence before you go into a real world situation, I highly recommend listening to those episodes to build you up. And then once you feel good and confident, I recommend take yourself seriously, right? But not too seriously. Like just laugh about it. Like laugh at yourself, have fun, smile. I feel like David Glasspool and Shannon Kenton gave a really great. You just gave some really great just life stories about just how they've gone through comedy and just looked at various situations in their lives from the lens of this is funny, you know, just take it easy. It doesn't need to be so serious. And that was our
Yeah.
January 21 episode, Shattering Assumptions. So I just really am a huge proponent that laughing helps. You know what I mean? It helps you to relax. It helps you to, you know, you'll feel more confident. You know what I mean? Because you're just not
Yep.
taking it in such like a serious, like stickler kind of a way. You're not really worried about who's watching you because you're just so busy having fun with it that if people are watching you, they're gonna feel your energy. They're gonna feel the
It's
fact that you're
true.
having fun, you know?
Yeah. It's so true.
One of those things that you make it this far. Sometimes you want to stop yourself. Don't stop yourself. Just go through with it. Listen to a couple of podcasts. Why don't you? A couple of scene change episodes, and and you know just have fun with it. And the bonus step here, which you don't have to follow, but we would love it if you did, is tell us how it went. Um, you went through all these steps and you made it this far. It's a new year. Some people say new year, new me, 2023, new me. You know what I mean? Um, you could, if you think of it that way, awesome. If you don't think of that way, no problem. You could be listening to this in September of 2025. I don't know. But whenever you choose to start, just start and let us know how it went. Were these tips useful for you? Was this like, it's too pie in the sky for me? I tried to keep it not pie in the sky. I tried to keep everything really
This is
tangible.
great.
I hope so. I hope that the listeners really get a lot out of it. You know what I mean? And obviously, it was even better to have Shane here because he's someone who he's been through these steps in various forms. You know what I mean? So, I mean,
Thank you. I
I've
appreciate
also
that.
I've done the steps. You know what I mean? I was gonna say, oh, anytime. I've done the steps, but I've done them for things more so outside of performing because my performing, as we talked about before, is more of a hobby. And I'm just always picking up new, like random things like, I want to try ballet. Why not? You know what I mean? Or I want to play violin. You know what I mean? But I always have fun with it. You know what I mean?
I
And
was
it's
awful at
really,
violin.
really, I
I
liked
was
it.
so bad.
We moved to like backwoods, Pennsylvania. There were no more violin teachers. So my violin went bye bye.
That's
That's
so
what
funny.
happens.
There are
Have you
still
heard?
videos
Oh,
of me playing the violin when I was 5.
no way. That's awesome. Have you heard of so like in Pennsylvania we call it Pennsylvania. I know you're from Kentucky, so this would be funny.
That is
Have you
funny.
heard of it? No? Is that a
No.
thing? I wasn't sure if that's like a thing like outside of
Nope.
PA, but yeah, no, we call it like Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania. And that's yeah, we moved from the
That's
city.
amazing.
Yeah, and it was just there was no violence, so I had to stop that. But yeah, I mean, I really hope that this helps all of you. If this just helps honestly just one person out there to just get started on something new, just it's worth it. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely. Thank you so
I
much for putting this
hope,
list together. It's
of
really
course,
comprehensive, and I feel like it makes a lot of sense, and it's really thorough, and it's easy to follow. It's something that you don't have to do in a certain amount of time. It's something that
mm-mm.
you can wrap up really easily, and like you did a killer job with this list.
Thank you so much. I mean, from one list maker to another. Um, this is something that, if you're into
High
this
compliments.
episode, you're all over. Yeah, right. You're all
The
over
list
this if you're
makers.
into lists. So yeah, I mean, if you want to take I probably should have said that at the beginning that if people wanted to take notes on it, that way they didn't have to listen twice. But however
We can put it in
you
the
choose to do
description.
it. Oh, smart. We'll make this list for you. You don't even have to take notes or listen twice, but you can if you want to. So thank you for listening. This has been another episode of Scene Change. Happy New Year.
I'm Caitlin McIntyre, President of the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Scene Change. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and visit our website at nfb-pad.org. There you'll find links to our social media, membership, and resources for blind performers. Thanks to everyone who makes this show happen. Scene Change is produced by Shane Lowe, Joe Schuneman, Precious Perez, Chris Nussbaum, Seyun Choi, and Aaron Jordan, with music by Ryan Strunk and Tom Page. Remember, you can be the performer you want. Blindness is not what holds you back. We'll see you next time.